Does working out on an empty stomach help with fat loss? That is what I am talking about today, and I'm going to share the theory behind this idea or this notion that fasted cardio is better than what we call fed cardio. And I'm also going to talk about a recent research that came out in 2023 and tell you exactly what the research shows. And so I want to start by just explaining sort of what this fasted cardio theory is and what is the sort of the argument for it. But basically the argument for fasted cardio is that it will help you to burn more fat during exercise. And the idea being is that whether you choose to do your workout either in the fasted state on an empty stomach, like you haven't had any food, or in the fed state where you've basically had breakfast and then you go to the gym. And the idea here is that in the fasted state, the fasted cardio is going to impact what type of energy you are using, and that it is going to increase two things that help us change our body composition, help us with fat loss. The number one is lipolysis, and lipolysis is where your body takes stored fat in your fat cells and breaks it down and pulls it into the bloodstream. That's lipolysis. But then there is also fat oxidation, which is when that fat that is now in your bloodstream actually gets used up as energy and sort of like exits the body if you want, okay? And so the idea here is that when we are in the fasted state, we're going to see an increase in those two things. And ultimately what the argument is that when you're in a fasted state, you're creating a hormonal environment that facilitates fat loss. And if you've been watching me for some time, you know I talk a lot about how we can address our hormones, we can manipulate our hormones with our nutrition and our lifestyle habits, and this would be one of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain sort of what the fasted state looks like from a hormonal perspective, which will help you understand why there is a potential that fasted cardio might help you lose more body fat than fed cardio. Before I go on, I would love for you to say hi. I see that a couple of you have joined me live. So if you are watching live, just put a live in the comments so that I can see you. Tell me, do you currently do fasted cardio or fed cardio if you are doing one of them? If you are catching this on a replay, just put a replay in the comments as well. And let's dive into sort of what is happening. What is this hormonal environment that we are seeing with fasted cardio? So number one, what I want you to understand is that when we eat, right? Like when we eat food, we are increasing insulin, right? We're increasing blood sugar levels and we're increasing insulin. Now, what insulin does is when there's a rise in insulin, we automatically or immediately see a suppression of fat burning because we have insulin. Basically, when the body starts to produce insulin, it's because there's plenty of energy floating around in our bloodstream. We don't need more energy coming out of the fat cells. And so it's kind of like our body has this system of saying, okay, when there's insulin, stop burning fat because that means we've got plenty of energy, right? So that's one of the hormones that shifts when we are eating food. Potentially not as much if you're eating like a ketogenic meal, or if you're doing something like a bulletproof coffee where you're eating like basically just pure fat, then you might not have that rise in insulin. But just so you understand, whereas when you're in the fasted state, when you have not eaten, those insulin levels are very low, which means that the body is getting the message that it should be burning fat. Okay, so that's number one. The second thing that's happening is that when you are in that fasted state, the body is using other means to provide a constant source of energy. And one of the things that goes up when you exercise in that fasted state, because now suddenly your body's like, okay, well, we need energy because we're moving more, we're doing exercise, we need energy, we're fasting, so what are we going to do? And so we also see, from a hormonal perspective, you see an increase in cortisol and epinephrine. So these are two of your stress hormones, and what they do is they basically tell the body to mobilize stored fat and turn it into energy. So you can see that when we're looking at sort of like from a hormonal perspective, what is happening potentially when we are doing fasted cardio is that hormonally we have low insulin, we have higher epinephrine, we have higher cortisol, all of which increases, again, lipolysis, which is where we're breaking stored fat down to bring it into the bloodstream, and fatty acid oxidation, which is where we actually take that fat in our bloodstream and use it as energy, okay? All potentially helping to really make sure that when we are doing exercise, we are burning fat. Because ultimately, when we're exercising, you could potentially be burning carbohydrates as energy, or you could potentially be burning fat as energy, right? And so you would think, okay, well, I want to get rid of some of this belly fat that I've accumulated in midlife, so it makes sense that I would want to, do fasted cardio and get my body to burn fat as energy. So the question becomes, if we are doing fasted cardio instead of fed cardio, and we're encouraging the body to utilize fat as a fuel source, will we see that impact in our body composition? Are we going to see a loss of body fat? And the results here are going to surprise you, because again, in theory, this makes sense, right? It makes sense that fasted cardio, the body has no energy, it's going to start utilizing fat. We're going to see changes in body fat composition. But the actual research in this area shows that it doesn't actually have a huge impact. Yes, it encourages the body to utilize fat as a fuel source, but it doesn't necessarily equate to body composition change. Calories in, calories out are still very important here. But you are setting the hormonal environment to encourage that fat burning a little bit more. So what I want to talk to you now is just about this recent research that was done. And this is probably the most recent research. So it was done in January of 2023. Now, the name of the research, and I'll put the link underneath the description here, is called The Effects of 6 Weeks of Fasted Aerobic Exercise on Body Shape and Blood Biochemical Index in Overweight and Obese Young Adult Males. So it was done on men, wasn't done on women, but I think we can still learn from it. So the men, they were all in their 20s. They were a little bit overweight. They had a BMI of about 30, body fat percentage of about 26. They were all quite sedentary. They were not exercisers to begin with. And they were split into 2 different groups. One group did fasted cardio, one group did fed cardio. Now this was a blind randomized controlled trial, which means that the participants didn't even know what they were studying. They were just told what to do. And it was in a fully enclosed environment. And this does not happen very often with like fitness and nutrition research. But what that means is that these people lived in a clinic for 6 weeks. They were given their meals, and they were supervised while they were doing their workouts. And as you can see, that doesn't happen. Not very many people want to go live in a lab for 6 weeks. And so this is the hard part about nutrition research and fitness and fat loss research, is that it's hard to control everything. But in this particular instance, they controlled it. And so each group received the same meals. Each group did the same type of cardio. So what they did, the type of fed or fasted cardio, was a brisk walk on a treadmill, okay? They weren't running. They weren't doing the elliptical, they were just walking. And the only difference between the two groups was when they had breakfast versus when they did cardio. So the fasted group would do their cardio at I think it was 7:30 a.m. and they would have breakfast at 8:30. Whereas the fed cardio group also had breakfast at 8:30, but then they did their fed cardio at about 9:40 or something like that, so that they had time to digest. That was the only difference. But other than that, they did the same type of exercise for the same amount of time, and they received the same meals. So really great, because it's isolating what was the impact really of fed versus fasted. Don't know what their caloric intake was. It was a slight deficit. They do mention they were in a deficit. We don't know how much. We don't know what their macros were. That's all the information that's provided. So what are the results? This is the important stuff. So in both groups, and I want you to hear this, both groups, fed and fasted, what changed? Their weight went down, their body mass index or BMI went down, body fat percentage went down, waist circumference, hip circumference, waist to hip ratio. And now with blood markers, which really is more of an indicator of overall health, triglycerides went down, total cholesterol went down, low density and very low density cholesterol went down. That's the bad cholesterol that you don't want. What else? But that went down in both, right? So in other words, adding in cardio, this brisk walking, regardless of whether it was done in the fed or the fasted state, is great for both managing your weight and your overall health, because both of those groups saw significant improvement. Now, the group that was doing the fasted cardio, they saw 1% more or lost 1% body fat more than the fed cardio. 1%. Okay, so it's not a huge amount. And unfortunately, again, the research was done only over 6 weeks. So it's hard to say if this had been done over a period of 24 weeks or over a period of 52 weeks, over a year, would that 1% become 8%? And if so, well, that could be a significant difference, but we don't know. So right now we just know it's about a 1% advantage that you're getting if you are doing your exercise in a fasted state, so on an empty stomach, nothing to eat before you go. The other thing that I want to point out, or the other part of the result, is that the fasted group also saw a significant drop in their fasting insulin levels, and they saw improvements in insulin sensitivity over the fed group. And this is really important for women in midlife, because you've heard me say this before potentially, or if you're brand new around here, this might be new information, but as we see a decline in estrogen levels, we women in midlife have a tendency towards insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So anything that we can do to manage our insulin levels is going to be important, okay? So what can you learn from this? I guess where my sort of what I get from this is that if you feel comfortable with fasted cardio, again, working out on an empty stomach earlier in the morning, it might give you a slight advantage when it comes to fat loss and body composition change specifically. Not a huge advantage, but a slight advantage, and that may add up over time. I think it would be great for anyone who is struggling with insulin resistance if you can start to get your body used to fasted cardio. And I talk a lot about metabolic flexibility. So how your body should have the ability to burn fat when it needs to burn fat, to burn carbs when it needs to burn carbs, to use stored energy when there's no food coming in. And I think this is a great training for the body, right? If you get your body used to saying like, hey, when there's no energy available before I've had breakfast, I'm going to go for a walk, and I want you to figure out how to find some energy. I think this can definitely help with that metabolic flexibility. Now, I would still recommend doing fed cardio if fasted cardio doesn't feel great, because there are still some huge, obviously, benefits to doing cardio. So don't let that put you off. If you don't want to do fasted, do fed, because clearly there are still numerous advantages to doing it. And then the last thing that I would say is that although I definitely want you out there doing cardio, walking is probably one of my preference, along with a little bit of higher intensity training. Strength training, resistance training should still be your priority, because resistance training, especially in midlife, when you are already prone to age-related muscle mass, if you go on a diet and you cut your calories in order to lose weight, one of your main goals is to protect your lean muscle mass and protect the speed of your metabolism. And resistance training is the only form of exercise that is going to do that. So if you're going to exercise, I highly recommend about 30 minutes a day as your goal. Resistance training, some form of resistance training, 2 or 3 times a week. On the other days, go for a walk, a brisk walk, some kind of, you still want to keep it sort of a lower intensity cardio, about 30 minutes. If you can do it in a fed state, it might give you a slight advantage, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. So that's what I had for you today. I would love to know again, what do you currently do? Do you do fed cardio, fasted cardio? Do you do cardio at all? And if you need more support, couple of ways that I can help. Obviously, I go live every single week, and I'm always trying to bring you information that you can implement with regards to fat loss and fitness as women over 40. So come back to this group, check it often. I'm trying to kind of create a scheduled time, but my life is all over the place in the summer, so that's a little bit hard. But that is one way that I can help. The other thing that I would do, if you are not yet on my newsletter, I would jump on. I'm going to start sharing mini meal plans on Mondays, where the focus is going to be on macronutrients. So helping you understand how your macros, your ratio of protein to fiber and fat, can really help with fat loss, and also just talking more about midlife nutrition, what we need to think about, what we need to prioritize, what we need to avoid. So definitely get on the newsletter. I'll post the link again under this recording. I have a couple of spots left in my private coaching program if you need that additional support and accountability, or you just want me to tell you exactly what to do. And then finally, I do have a membership that I started about 2 months ago. My ladies are the founding members are about a month in now, where I provide them with meal plans and recipes and education about nutrition and lifestyle habits for midlife. I will be opening the doors again, likely towards the end of August, so keep your eyes open for that. And then finally, I would love to hear from you. What questions do you have about fat loss and fitness for women over 40? What do you want to learn about? Do you have questions about fasting, about macros, about workouts? What kind of video would you like to see next week or in the coming weeks? Let me know, and have a fantastic day. Thank you for watching. Bye.